My name is Evelyn Harper, and I'm 62 years old. For nearly 4 decades, my husband Thomas and I built what we thought was a perfect life on the shores of Lake Huron in a small Michigan town called Port Austin. Our lake house, a cedar, shingled haven with a wraparound porch, was where we raised our 2 daughters, Clara and Beatrice. It was where we hosted barbecues, watched sunsets over the water, and dreamed of growing old surrounded by grandchildren. But 3 days ago, everything I believed about my family shattered when Clara and her husband, Gregory, tried to kill us by poisoning our coffee and staging a boating accident. As I lay in the hospital pretending to be unconscious, Thomas whispered a secret that tore my heart apart, a truth about Clara and her sister Beatrice that we had buried for 25 years. Our life in Port Austin was the kind of idyllic existence you'd see in a Norman Rockwell painting. Every morning, I'd wake to the sound of waves lapping against our dock and the smell of Thomas's pancakes sizzling in the kitchen. I taught history at the local high school, filling my afternoons with stories of my students' dreams and dramas. Thomas ran a small hardware store downtown, his hands calloused from years of fixing neighbors' leaky pipes or building bookshelves for the library. Our daughters grew up in the glow of this simple life. Clara, our firstborn, was the spark of the family, always laughing, always planning adventures. Beatrice, 5 years younger, was quieter, more thoughtful, but just as beloved. Sundays were sacred. After church, we'd gather around the oak dining table Thomas had built with his own hands. Clara would chatter about her plans to become a lawyer, while Beatrice sketched in her notebook, occasionally offering a shy smile. In the evenings, Thomas and I would walk along the lakefront trail, our footsteps crunching on gravel, talking about our future retirement, travel, maybe a trip to see the Grand Canyon. The lake house, worth nearly $400,000 with its prime waterfront view, was our legacy, something we planned to pass down to our girls. Family gatherings were the heart of our home. My brother, Walter, and his wife, Diane, would drive up from Detroit with their kids. The house would fill with the chaos of cousins chasing each other across the lawn, the women swapping recipes in the kitchen, and the men tinkering with the boat or grilling burgers on the deck. Thomas was my rock through it all. After 38 years of marriage, he still left handwritten notes on my pillow, helped me grade papers, and held my hand during scary movies. We were a team unbreakable, or so I thought, but perfection, as I learned too late, is often a mask for the darkest truths. When Clara was 20, something shifted in our family. She started arguing with Beatrice over things I couldn't quite grasp: money, responsibilities, who was closer to us. I'd catch them whispering in the hallway, their voices sharp, only to fall silent when I appeared. Thomas brushed it off as sister stuff, saying they'd work it out. I wanted to believe him because I needed to believe our family was still whole. One night in July, 25 years ago, Beatrice didn't come home for dinner. She was 15, always sketching by the lake or reading in her room, so at first we weren't alarmed, but as the clock ticked past 9 p.m., then 10, panic set in. Clara said she'd seen Beatrice heading toward the dock after lunch, but she didn't know where she went after that. Thomas and I searched the town, the trails, the beach. Neighbors joined us, their flashlights cutting through the summer night. At dawn, they found Beatrice's body floating in the lake, her sketchbook drifting nearby, pages soaked and illegible. The police called it a tragic accident. They said she'd likely fallen off the dock in the dark, maybe chasing a drawing that blew into the water. I never questioned it because the alternative was unimaginable. Beatrice's funeral broke me. I wore the same black dress I'd worn to my father's funeral, clutching Thomas's hand as Clara stood stoic, her eyes dry. I thought she was being strong for us, but now I know her silence hid something far worse. After Beatrice's death, Clara changed. She became the perfect daughter, helping with chores, spending hours with Thomas at the hardware store, bringing me flowers when she saw me crying. I thought she was grieving in her own way, trying to fill the void Beatrice left. How wrong I was. She was crafting a facade, hiding the monster she'd become. The years passed, and the pain of losing Beatrice dulled but never vanished. Clara married Gregory, a charming real estate agent from Ann Arbor. They seemed happy, settling into a life of their own with 2 children, our grandchildren, Lily and Ethan. Gregory called me Mom and fixed things around the house when they visited. Clara took up gardening, filling our backyard with roses that reminded me of Beatrice's sketches. Life felt like it was healing, like we'd been given a second chance. But now, lying in this hospital bed with the taste of bitter coffee still lingering in my mouth, I know that second chance was a lie. The first signs of trouble came 6 months ago when Thomas and I decided to update our will. Between the lake house, my inherited farmland, and our savings, we had nearly $500 to leave our family. Clara suggested we see a lawyer. Mom, Dad, you're in your 60s now, she said, her voice warm but insistent. It's smart to get everything in order. Gregory nodded, squeezing my shoulder. We just want you to be safe, he added. I believed them because I wanted to believe my daughter loved me. The lawyer, Margaret, was a family friend who'd known us for years. She explained our options: a trust, splitting the inheritance between Clara's kids, or a traditional will. Clara pushed for her and Gregory to be named sole heirs, saying they'd distribute everything fairly to Lily and Ethan. "You'll need us when you're older," she said, her smile too perfect. "We'll take care of you." Something in her tone made my stomach twist, but Thomas, ever trusting, agreed. I had doubts, remembering how Beatrice used to talk about helping us when we retired, but Beatrice was gone and Clara was all we had left. We signed the will on a rainy Thursday. Clara wore a blue scarf, hugging me tightly afterward. "We're family forever now," she whispered. Her words sent a chill down my spine, though I didn't know why. That night, as I chopped vegetables for dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling I'd made a terrible mistake. Clara and Gregory's visits became more frequent, but they felt different. They weren't just family time anymore. They'd suggest selling the lake house, moving to a safer condo, or buying life insurance. "This place is too big for you two," Gregory said, eyeing the oak table like it was already his. "A smaller place would be easier to maintain." But the lake house was our home, filled with memories, Beatrice's drawings pinned to the fridge, Clara's childhood handprints in the concrete by the dock. I couldn't imagine leaving. When I resisted, Clara's eyes flashed with something cold. "Mom, you're being stubborn," she snapped, a tone she'd never used before. "What if you fall? We won't be here to help," Gregory chimed in. "The market's hot right now. You could cash out and live comfortably." Thomas started to waver, always the practical one, but I felt a growing unease. Something was wrong. One night, after another tense dinner, I asked Thomas if he thought Clara's sudden interest in our finances was odd. "She's just worried about us," he said, scrubbing a plate, but his eyes held a flicker of doubt. "Evelyn, do you remember how Clara was after Beatrice died? She was different." His words hit me like a stone. Clara had been too composed, too quick to step into the role of perfect daughter. I'd chalked it up to grief, but now I wasn't so sure. Things escalated when Clara suggested they get power of attorney over our finances. "It's just in case," she said, pouring tea in my kitchen like she owned it. "If you get sick, we can handle things without legal hassles." Her logic was flawless, but her insistence made my skin crawl. I couldn't sleep that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the lake's gentle waves. Why did my daughter need so much control? The next day I called Walter. My brother had always been blunt, quick to spot ulterior motives. When I told him about Clara's pressure, he was quiet for a long moment. "Evelyn," he said, "doesn't it strike you as odd that Clara's so obsessed with your money? She and Gregory aren't struggling. Why do they need to control everything?" His words crystallized my fears. Clara's real estate business was thriving, and Gregory's deals were lucrative. They didn't need our money, or did they? That afternoon, when Clara came by with another helpful suggestion, I confronted her. "Why is our will so important to you?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Your father and I are still healthy." Her face tightened, and for a split second I saw something in her eyes, something predatory. "Mom, it's not about control," she said, her voice sharp. "It's about family." But the word family sounded hollow, like a line from a script. That night, Thomas and I argued for the first time in years. He thought I was paranoid, reading too much into Clara's behavior. I insisted something was off, that our daughter wasn't the girl we'd raised. Thomas, I said, drying dishes, do you remember how calm Clara was at Beatrice's funeral? It wasn't normal. He froze, the sponge still in his hand. Evelyn, he said, his voice barely a whisper, there's something I never told you about Beatrice's death. My heart pounded. What about her death? I asked, gripping the counter. Thomas sat at the table, his face pale. The night Beatrice died, Clara wasn't at home like she said. I saw her leave the house around 6 p.m., heading toward the dock. I followed her because she'd been acting strange, angry, secretive. He paused, rubbing his hands as if trying to erase the memory. I saw them arguing by the water. Clara was yelling, saying Beatrice was always the favorite, that she'd never get her fair share. My knees buckled. Her fair share of what? I whispered. The lake house, our savings, everything. Thomas said, tears in his eyes. Beatrice had told me a week before that she'd overheard Clara talking about selling the house someday, splitting it with her. Beatrice didn't want that. She loved this place. They fought, and... Evelyn, I saw Clara push her. The room spun. You saw her push Beatrice into the lake. I choked out. Thomas nodded, his voice breaking. I was too far to stop it. By the time I got there, Beatrice was gone. Clara was on the dock, sobbing, saying it was an accident, that Beatrice slipped. She begged me not to tell you, said it would destroy our family. I believed her, or I wanted to. She was our daughter, and Beatrice was already gone. I stumbled to a chair, my world collapsing. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded. Because I couldn't lose you too. He said, I thought Clara would change, that it was a horrible mistake, but she didn't. She's been lying to us for 25 years. The truth hit like a tidal wave. Clara hadn't just killed her sister. She'd been manipulating us ever since, playing the perfect daughter while hiding her guilt. And now, with our will in place, she was after our money. That's why she wants the lake house. I murmured. It's not about love. It's about covering her tracks. Thomas pulled out papers from his desk, bank statements he'd been hiding. I've been checking our accounts, he said. Clara's been siphoning money, small amounts, $500 here, $1 zeros, zero there. Over the years, it adds up to nearly $60 zeros, zero, and her business, it's failing. Gregory's deals are underwater, they're desperate. I stared at the numbers, my daughter's betrayal written in black and white. Does Gregory know about Beatrice? I asked. I'm sure he does, Thomas said. The way he backs her up, the way he pushes us to sell they're in this together, the realization was a knife to the heart. Our daughter and her husband weren't just greedy, they were dangerous. If Clara had killed Beatrice for a share of the lake house, what would stop her from killing us for the whole thing? We have to go to the police, I said, my voice trembling. With what proof? Thomas asked, his face etched with guilt. I'm an accomplice, Evelyn. I covered up a murder. If I talk now, I'll go to jail, and who'll believe us without evidence? He was right, but the thought of doing nothing was unbearable. So we just wait for her to kill us like she killed Beatrice? I asked. We'll be careful. Thomas said, his voice firm despite the fear in his eyes. We'll gather evidence, watch their every move, but our plans were interrupted by a phone call. It was Clara, her voice bright and chilling. Mom, Gregory and I were thinking your 40th anniversary is coming up. How about a family boating trip on the lake, just the 4 of us, a special day to celebrate? My blood turned to ice. I looked at Thomas, who'd overheard, his face pale. That sounds lovely. I managed to say, my voice shaking, let me talk to your father and call you back. After hanging up, we sat in silence, the truth sinking in. The lake, I whispered. She's going to kill us on the lake, just like she killed Beatrice. Thomas nodded, his jaw tight. It'll look like an accident, capsized boat, drowned parents. No one will question it. That night, we didn't sleep, holding each other in the dark, whispering plans to survive our daughter's betrayal. The next few days were a nightmare of pretense. Clara and Gregory visited, all smiles, talking about the boating trip like it was a gift. I forced myself to nod, to laugh, while my heart screamed in terror. I was looking at my sister's murderer, and now she was coming for us. On Wednesday, Clara arrived with a picnic basket, her smile as false as ever. I got everything for our trip, she said, unpacking sandwiches, fruit, and a thermos of coffee. It's going to be perfect. I watched her hands, wondering if she'd already laced something with poison. Gregory followed, carrying a new life jacket. Safety first, he said, winking. The irony made my stomach churn. Isn't the lake rough this time of year? I asked, searching for an excuse to cancel. Not at all, Clara said, her voice too smooth. We picked a calm route, perfect for a relaxing day. We'll take care of you. That night, Thomas and I sat in the dark, trembling. We can't go, I said. We'll say I'm sick, anything. If we don't, Thomas replied, they'll find another way. Carbon monoxide leak, a fire, at least on the lake. We know what they're planning. So what do we do? I asked, desperate. We go, he said, his voice steady. But we're prepared. I'll hide my phone, record everything. If we survive, we'll have evidence. If not, someone will know the truth. On Friday, we barely ate, knowing it might be our last meal in the lake house. Thomas wrote a letter to Walter, detailing Clara's crimes and our fears, hiding it in our safe. If we don't come back, he said, he'll find it. That night we lay in bed, whispering love and apologies. If I don't make it, Thomas said, know that you've been my everything. I cried, memorizing his face, terrified it might be the last time. Saturday morning dawned bright, the lake sparkling like a cruel joke. Clara arrived at 8 a.m., whistling as she loaded the boat. Gregory was all charm, helping Thomas carry the cooler. I watched their every move, my heart pounding. The boat, a 20-foot pontoon we'd bought years ago, bobbed gently at the dock. It was the same boat Beatrice had loved, the one she'd sketched from the shore. At breakfast, Clara poured coffee from the thermos, her eyes locked on mine. Drink up, Mom, she said. It's a long day. The bitter smell made my stomach lurch. I pretended to sip, spilling most into a napkin when she wasn't looking. Thomas did the same, his hands trembling. We couldn't prove the coffee was poisoned, but we weren't taking chances. Clara outlined the route, pointing to a map. We'll head to the cove, she said. It's quiet, perfect for photos. Her mention of photos chilled me, evidence of our happy family outing before the accident. Gregory added, the water's calm, but we'll stay close to shore just in case. His words were a lie. The cove was deep, surrounded by rocky cliffs, the perfect place for a boat to capsize. As we boarded, I noticed Clara checking the life jackets, her fingers lingering on ours. These are snug, she said, tightening mine. I wondered if they were sabotage designed to fail. Thomas squeezed my hand, his phone hidden in his pocket, recording. The ride started innocently. Clara played oldies on a portable speaker, singing along as the boat cut through the water. Gregory steered, his eyes scanning the horizon. I sat close to Thomas, memorizing the shoreline pine trees, a red buoy, a distant lighthouse. If we survived, I'd need to describe exactly where it happened. After 30 minutes, we reached the cove. The water was still, the cliffs looming like silent witnesses. Clara pulled out her camera. Let's get some pictures, she said, positioning us at the boat's edge. Smile, Mom and Dad. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were cold. Thomas and I hugged, the boat rocking slightly. Every click of the camera felt like a countdown. Move closer to the rail, Gregory suggested, stepping behind us. The cliffs make a great backdrop. One step closer meant we were inches from the water. I felt the boat shift, a deliberate lurch. Thomas gripped my arm, whispering, be ready. Smile one more time, Clara said, her voice hard. This is the one we'll frame. Before I could react, Gregory shoved us. The boat tipped and we plunged into the icy water, the shock stealing my breath. I heard Clara scream, a fake cry of panic as the boat rocked violently. Thomas grabbed my hand, pulling me under the surface. Play dead, he gasped, his voice muffled by water. I let my body go limp, floating face, down, my lungs burning. Through the water's blur, I saw Clara and Gregory peering over the boat's edge, their faces twisted with satisfaction. They're gone, Gregory said, his voice carrying. The coffee did its job. It was perfect, Clara replied. Capsized boat, drunk parents, no questions. Their words were a confession, captured by Thomas's phone, if it was still working. I prayed the waterproof case held. My body ached from the cold, my limbs growing heavy, but I forced myself to stay still. Above, Clara and Gregory argued about next steps. We need to call for help. Clara said, play the grieving kids. Not yet, Gregory snapped. We wait, make sure they're not coming up. Minutes dragged like hours, my lungs screamed, but Thomas's grip kept me grounded. Finally, I heard the boat's engine roar as they sped away, likely to stage their distress call. We surfaced, gasping, the cold air a shock. "We're alive," Thomas whispered, his teeth chattering, "but we're not safe yet." We swam to a rocky outcrop, hiding behind boulders. My body shook, not just from cold, but from the reality of what we'd survived. "The phone?" I asked. Thomas pulled it from his pocket, water dripping. "It's intact. We have their confession. We were alive, but stranded, injured, and miles from help." The cove was isolated, and without a phone signal, we couldn't call for rescue. "They'll come back," I said. "To make sure we're dead. Then we stay hidden," Thomas replied, "until we hear real help." Hours later, we heard a helicopter and distant shouts. Clara and Gregory had called for rescue, playing their roles as devastated survivors. We stayed low, listening as Coast Guard boats arrived. "We found them," a voice shouted, likely spotting the capsized boat they'd staged. "They're down there." Clara's voice wailed, Oscar-worthy. "My parents, please." Thomas and I exchanged a look. If we revealed ourselves now, Clara and Gregory might destroy the phone before we could hand it over. We had to wait for the right moment. The Coast Guard pulled us from the rocks, assuming we were dead. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing shallow, as they loaded us onto stretchers. The paramedics worked frantically, their voices tense. "Faint pulse on the man," one said. "The woman's barely there." In the helicopter, I heard Clara sobbing. "It happened so fast. The boat tipped and they fell." Gregory added, "We tried to save them." Their lies fueled my resolve. At Port Austin Hospital, chaos erupted. Doctors shouted orders, machines beeped. I kept up the act even as nurses checked my vitals. "Her pulse is stronger than expected," a nurse, Sarah, whispered. My heart raced had I slipped. Trauma's unpredictable. The doctor replied, "Keep monitoring." Clara and Gregory were allowed to see us, their final performance. Clara touched my hand, her voice breaking. "Mom, I'm so sorry." Gregory added, "We loved you so much." But then Clara leaned close, whispering, "You should have signed the house over, Mom." Beatrice learned the hard way. Sarah gasped softly. She'd heard. I moved my finger once, praying she'd understand. She did, "Ma'am." She whispered after they left, "If you're in danger, move your finger twice." I did. "Oh God," she murmured, "I'm getting help." Minutes later, Sarah returned with Dr. Patel and 2 police officers. "Mrs. Harper," Dr. Patel said, "you're safe. Open your eyes." I did, tears streaming as I saw their concerned faces. "My daughter," I rasped. "She tried to kill us. She killed Beatrice." I told them everything: Beatrice's murder, the stolen money, the poisoned coffee, the boat. Thomas, now conscious, handed over his phone. "It's all there," he said, "their confession." The police listened to the recording, Clara's voice chillingly clear. The coffee did its job. Gregory's, drunk parents, no questions. Detective Ramirez, a stern woman, nodded. "This is enough for an arrest. They're in the waiting room, playing victims. Are you sure we're safe?" I asked, fear spiking. "We've got officers ready." Ramirez said, "They won't get near you." Through a crack in the curtain, I watched as police approached Clara and Gregory in the waiting room. "Clara and Gregory Vance, you're under arrest for the murder of Beatrice Harper and the attempted murder of Evelyn and Thomas Harper." Clara's scream echoed. "This is a mistake. They're dead," Gregory shouted. "We saw them drown." Their panic was another confession, recorded by police. In the chaos, Clara turned on Gregory. "It was your idea," she yelled. "You said the poison would be quick." Gregory snapped. "You pushed Beatrice. You planned the boat." Their alliance crumbled, just as we'd hoped. Ramirez returned, her face grim but satisfied. "They're in custody. The recording, their confessions, your testimony, it's airtight. We also found cyanide traces in the thermos and tampered life jackets on the boat. There's more." She continued, "Your daughter's business is bankrupt. They owe $200 to creditors, some tied to organized crime. Your estate was their way out." The betrayal cut deeper. "Clara hadn't just wanted our money. She needed it to survive. What about our grandchildren?" I asked, thinking of Lily and Ethan. Social Services has them. Ramirez said, "You can apply for custody once you're recovered." The thought of raising Clara's children was daunting but necessary. They deserved a real family, not the lie Clara had built. The trial was 6 months later. Facing Clara in court was like staring into a void. Her eyes held no remorse, only calculation. I testified, recounting every detail, ending with a direct address. "Clara, you were my daughter, but you died the night you killed Beatrice. The monster you became isn't my child." The jury took 2 days to convict Clara and Gregory of first-degree murder and attempted murder. They got life without parole. A year later, Thomas and I adopted Lily and Ethan. The lake house is theirs now, a place to heal from their mother's sins. Every night, I tell them about Beatrice, her sketches, her love for the lake, keeping her memory alive, ensuring Clara's darkness doesn't win. 1 year has passed since the trial, and the lake house feels different now, lighter, as if the weight of 25 years of lies has finally lifted. Thomas and I sit on the porch most evenings, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the water in shades of orange and pink. Lily and Ethan, now officially our adopted grandchildren, chase fireflies in the yard, their laughter echoing where Beatrice's quiet sketches once filled the silence. We've turned Beatrice's old room into an art studio for them, hanging her surviving drawings salvaged from boxes in the attic on the walls. It's our way of keeping her memory alive, of ensuring Clara's darkness doesn't poison another generation. The adoption process wasn't easy. Social Services investigated thoroughly, interviewing neighbors, reviewing the trial transcripts, and even speaking to Clara in prison. She fought it at first, sending letters from her cell claiming we'd stolen her children, that we were the monsters. But the evidence was overwhelming. Her conviction, the recordings, the financial forensics showing how she and Gregory had drained our accounts while plotting our deaths. The judge ruled in our favor, citing the children's best interests. Lily, at 10 years old, understood more than we wished. She'd overheard arguments about money, seen her parents stress. Ethan, only 7, just missed his mom and dad, but he's adapting, calling us grandma and grandpa without hesitation. We've made changes to the house. Thomas reinforced the dock, adding brighter lights and non-slip surfaces, no more dark corners where accidents could hide. I planted new roses along the path to the water, bright reds and yellows that bloom vibrantly, chasing away the shadows. And we installed security cameras not out of paranoia but peace of mind. The lake, once a place of terror, is reclaiming its role as our sanctuary. Walter and Diane visit often now, bringing their grandkids for weekends. The house fills with life again, barbecues on the deck, boat rides with real life jackets, checked twice, and stories around the fire pit. Walter still apologizes for not pushing harder years ago when he sensed something off about Clara. I should have said more. He tells me during our walks. But I forgive him. We all miss the signs, blinded by love. The media frenzy died down months ago. The case was dubbed the Lake House Murder Plot in the papers, a cautionary tale about inheritance greed. Reporters called for interviews, but we declined most. Thomas and I testified once more during the sentencing appeal. Clara's lawyers tried to argue diminished capacity, claiming financial desperation drove her to madness. But the judge wasn't swayed. This was calculated evil, he said, denying the appeal. Clara and Gregory will spend the rest of their lives behind bars, separate facilities after their mutual blame turned to hatred. Sometimes I get letters from Clara, the prison forwards them, and I read them in the quiet of the kitchen. They start with, "Please, Mom, forgive me. It was Gregory's influence," then devolve into accusations. "You always loved Beatrice more." I don't respond. There's nothing left to say. She's a stranger now, the daughter I thought I knew buried with Beatrice all those years ago. Thomas struggles with guilt the most. Nights when the lake is stormy, he wakes from nightmares, whispering about that night on the dock. I should have stopped her, he says, tears in his eyes. I hold him, reminding him we both paid the price for silence. Therapy helps. A counselor in town specializes in trauma, and we go together. Slowly, we're rebuilding. The grandchildren are our light. Lily has Beatrice's talent for drawing. Her sketches of the lake hang beside her gray tants. Ethan loves fishing with Thomas, just like Clara did as a child before everything twisted. We tell them age-appropriate truths. Their parents made terrible mistakes and are away for a long time. When they are older, we'll share more, but for now, we focus on love, stability, and the family we're creating anew. This summer, we hosted a memorial for Beatrice, 25 years late, but finally honest. Friends and family gathered on the dock at sunset. I read from her old sketchbook, poems she'd written about the water. Thomas scattered wildflowers into the lake, the petals floating like her dreams. Lily and Ethan added drawings of their own. It was closure, a way to say goodbye properly without the shadow of lies. As I watch the kids play, I think about legacy. The lake house isn't just property, it's a testament to survival, to choosing truth over facade. Thomas and I updated our will again, this time leaving everything in a trust for Lily and Ethan, with safeguards no one can exploit. We're not rich anymore. Clara's thefts and legal fees took a toll, but we're content. The hardware store thrives under new management. Thomas sold it but stays on as a consultant, and I volunteer at the library, reading to children who remind me of my girls at that age. Life isn't perfect. Some nights the wind off the lake sounds like whispers of the past, but we've learned that family isn't just blood, it's the choices we make, the truths we face. Thomas takes my hand on the porch, his grip strong despite the years. We made it, Evelyn, he says. Against all odds, yes, we did, and as the stars emerge over the water, I know Beatrice is at peace, watching over us. The lake house legacy lives on not in greed or betrayal, but in redemption, love, and the quiet strength of second chances.